Welcome to tonight's haunting journey into the unknown with three disturbing true Halloween horror stories. Halloween, a night when the boundary between the mundane and the macabre seems to vanish. For most, it's a time of festive costumes, glowing jack-o'-lanterns, and sweet treats. But for a few unlucky souls, it becomes a chilling reminder of how real the darkness can be. These are not your average spooky tales, they are unsettling accounts that will leave you questioning what really lurks in the shadows on All Hallows Eve. Before we unravel these tales of terror, I want to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude to each of you for supporting this channel. Your enthusiasm, comments, and engagement breathe life into the stories we share, and I couldn't do this without you. As you watch, I hope you feel the connection of this amazing community we've built together. Please take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Your health and happiness are so important, and I truly appreciate you choosing to spend your time here with me. Now settle in, dim the lights, and prepare yourself. These stories may leave you seeing Halloween night in a completely different way. Story 1: The Night We Met the Stranger. I was 7 years old when Halloween turned from a time of innocent glee to something darker, something that clung to me like the autumn chill. It was a crisp evening in late October, and the leaves had begun their metamorphosis, shifting from vibrant greens to a palette of browns and fiery oranges. My mother usually accompanied my older brother and me, leading us down the tree-lined streets of our neighborhood, but that year was different. She dropped me off at Sean's house. Sean was a year older, with the sort of confidence I lacked. He had an older sister who took care of him, though the absence of their parents always made me uneasy. There was something off about that house. It had an odd smell, like wet cats mixed with something that had gone bad. I often wondered if it was just the pets, or if there was something more sinister lurking beneath the surface. But at that age, my imagination often ran wild, coloring reality in shades of fear. Sean lived in a creaky old house at the end of a long, winding road lined with gnarled trees, their twisted branches like skeletal fingers reaching toward the moon. The kind of house you'd expect to see in a horror movie, not a suburban neighborhood where laughter and candy should reign supreme. His sister was a phantom in the background, always present yet rarely seen, her door usually shut tight. The two of them had a rhythm, a language that was half familiar and half forbidding. I felt the weight of that unspoken bond, but it also ignited a sense of excitement within me. Tonight we were free. We put on our costumes, Sean a vampire, Johnny a werewolf, and I was a clumsy little ghost draped in a bedsheet. My mother's voice echoed in my head, "Just be careful, don't stray too far." But those warnings faded as we hit the pavement, the cool air filled with the sweet scent of caramel and chocolate, the sounds of laughter ringing in our ears. We started our trick-or-treating expedition around 5, going door to door, bags growing heavier with each house. Parents huddled together on porches, sipping drinks, while we basked in the freedom of the night. By 8, however, the streets had grown quieter, the thrill of adventure mixing with an unsettling sensation that crept in like the fog rolling in from the sea. We were lying about parental supervision when asked, puffing ourselves up with bravado that felt thin and brittle as the night wore on. After a break for pizza at Sean's house, muffled laughter, and the faint echo of a television in the background, we ventured out again. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting elongated shadows that danced around us, and the laughter of children began to fade like the distant echo of a forgotten dream. That's when we saw him, a man pushing a stroller, the faint outline of a child nestled inside. At first glance, he seemed harmless, even friendly. He smiled at us, a wide grin that cut through the darkness, and offered us some leftover candy. The man spoke easily, his voice smooth like warm syrup, wrapping around us in an unsettling embrace. He led us down the street, gesturing toward his house, which loomed ahead like a ghost of better times, uninviting yet oddly magnetic. The man leaned down into the stroller, murmuring something to his daughter, though I could see nothing within. My stomach twisted, the air thick with a sense of trust that seemed unfounded, but it felt so easy to follow him. As we approached the house, Sean's demeanor shifted. I noticed his face pale, the confidence from earlier fading, as he exchanged worried glances with Johnny. The front door creaked open, the dim light spilling out like a warning, and for a brief moment I felt a wave of dread wash over me. My instincts screamed to run, but curiosity anchored me in place. The moment we stepped inside, it was as if the very air shifted. The interior was dark, almost claustrophobic, shadows clinging to the corners like secrets best left undiscovered. The man turned his back, moving toward the kitchen, and in that instant, Sean's voice cracked through the silence, warning me to leave. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. I felt it in my bones as I spun around to see Sean's alarmed face, his eyes wide with fear. A neighbor, a woman with sharp features and a protective gaze, suddenly appeared in the doorway. Her words rushed out in a breathless blur, filled with urgency. "You boys need to get away from here. He has no child." The blood drained from my face. Panic set in, clawing at my insides. We bolted, racing out of that house, our feet pounding against the pavement as the darkness swallowed us whole. As we reached the street, I glanced back, a sickening dread pooling in my stomach. The man stood in the doorway, his smile twisted, a predator revealing his true nature. My heart hammered in my chest as we ran, fear propelling us forward, a force that blurred the lines of reality and dreams. We arrived at Sean's house, breathless and wide-eyed. I could feel the tension in the air as we recounted what had happened, but the gravity of it all settled in like a dense fog. The police were called, but it felt like a futile gesture. My world had shifted on its axis, and the shadows had taken on new meaning. That night marked a boundary, a line between childhood innocence and a chilling understanding of the darker elements that lurked beneath the surface of our small town. The thrill of Halloween morphed into a haunting echo of what could have been a reminder that even the seemingly innocent can harbor monsters. Days turned into weeks, and the incident faded into a blurred memory, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. I looked at Sean differently now, a flicker of doubt clouding my perception. He had been my friend, my partner in mischief, but that night had severed something between us. It was Halloween again, a year later. The leaves crunched beneath my feet, and I could feel the chill in the air, the distant echo of laughter mingling with whispers of something far less innocent. My mother still took me trick-or-treating, her protective instincts on high alert, but the laughter of children felt like an afterthought, a mere shadow of joy. As we wandered the streets, I noticed a figure standing on the corner, the same man from that fateful night, his presence lurking in the periphery, always just out of reach. The shadows hugged him like a cloak, hiding his true intentions as he watched the children pass, their laughter echoing like a cruel reminder of innocence lost. I didn't say anything to my mother. I kept the fear close to my chest, buried beneath layers of bravado. But every time I glanced back, there he was, his smile hauntingly familiar, his eyes glinting with an unsettling familiarity that sent shivers down my spine. It was a night that should have been filled with joy, yet I felt an overwhelming sense of dread settle over me. The laughter of the other children rang hollow, the vibrant colors of costumes blending into a blur of anxiety. At some point, I lost sight of my mother, the warm safety she provided slipping away like a wisp of smoke. I wandered through the crowd, my heart pounding as I searched for her. That's when I saw him again, the man from before, lurking just beyond the edge of the streetlight's glow. A chill raced down my spine, an instinct kicked in. I turned to flee, weaving through the throng of revelers, desperate to escape the suffocating feeling that clung to me like a shroud. I felt as though I were running through a dream, the world around me blurring as I lost myself in a haze of fear. I finally spotted my mother, her figure a beacon of comfort in the swirling chaos. Relief washed over me as I rushed toward her, the shadows behind me retreating into the night. But as I reached her side, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me, lurking just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to pounce. We continued our trick-or-treating, but my heart wasn't in it. Each house felt like a step deeper into the unknown, a reminder that safety was an illusion. I kept my gaze focused ahead, but the memory of that night haunted me like a ghost, an unwelcome specter lurking in the corners of my mind. When we finally returned home, I climbed into bed, the weight of the night pressing down on me. The darkness in my room felt heavier than usual, the shadows stretching across the walls like fingers reaching for something just out of reach. I pulled the covers tight around me, but sleep refused to come, the images of that man flashing behind my closed eyelids. It was then that I understood the stranger was not just a man, he was a reminder of the fragility of innocence, a harbinger of the dark truths that lurk beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect lives. The laughter of children on Halloween masked the fear that we all carry, the knowledge that the world is filled with things we cannot comprehend. As I lay there, the darkness closing in around me, I realized that childhood is a fragile thing, easily shattered by the harsh light of reality. The laughter, the joy they all felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the knowledge that monsters don't always reside under the bed. Sometimes they walk among us, wearing friendly smiles and cloaked in the guise of normalcy, waiting for a moment of vulnerability to strike. I never went trick-or-treating again. The night of the stranger marked an end to my childhood innocence, a shift in the narrative of my life. I learned that some stories are not meant to be told, that some shadows are best left unexplored, lurking in the corners of our minds where the light can't reach. And as I grew older, the memories of that night faded but never truly left me. The darkness became a familiar companion, a constant reminder of the fragility of childhood and the shadows that linger just beyond the light. I had learned to live with the fear, to navigate the world with my eyes wide open, knowing that the scariest stories are the ones we can't escape from, the ones that shape us long after the laughter fades. Story 2, The Last Laugh. It was October 31st, 2016, and the air held a crispness that hinted at winter's approach. My parents had decided to leave for the weekend, which left me at 16, with the dubious honor of handing out candy to the trick-or-treaters in our quiet cul-de-sac. I never minded Halloween much. Most of the neighborhood kids had long outgrown the holiday, but this year felt different. An undercurrent of unease seeped into the atmosphere, an unsettling tension that lurked just beyond the corners of my mind. The night began predictably enough. A few kids in costumes came and went, their laughter echoing in the distance, mingling with the scent of autumn leaves. I sat in our dimly lit living room, nestled in an oversized sweatshirt that hung off my frame like a blanket. I was a poor substitute for my parents, but I tried to make it work, pouring candy into paper pumpkins and ignoring the uneasy feeling gnawing at me. By 9:30, the trick-or-treating had faded into a distant memory. The streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows across the pavement, while I contemplated closing the door and shutting off the lights. It was a decision I found myself hesitating over, as if the decision to extinguish the last remnants of the night would somehow invite the darkness into my home. Then the doorbell rang. At first, I thought it might be one of the few lingering stragglers, maybe a couple of high school seniors who still thought it was fun to don a mask and beg for candy. But when I glanced through the peephole, I froze. A tall figure stood on the doorstep, dressed in a clown costume. The garish makeup smudged across his face gave him a sinister edge, and the oversized shoes seemed to loom unnaturally against the wooden porch. Something about him sent a chill spiraling down my spine, and instinct kicked in before reason had a chance to catch up. I backed away from the door, my pulse racing. I didn't want to open it, didn't want to risk inviting whatever malevolence lay behind that cheerful facade into my home. I quickly locked the door, a loud click echoing through the silence, and pressed my back against the wall, hoping that somehow this was just a trick of the light or a cruel joke. The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time, the sound reverberating through the house like a hammer against stone. My heart hammered against my ribcage, and the noise crawled beneath my skin, pulling at the edges of my anxiety. I found myself peeking through the peephole again, my breath held tight in my chest. The clown stood there, unmoving now, except for the slight tilt of his head as if he could sense my eyes on him. He wore a grin that stretched unnaturally wide across his painted face, a rictus of delight that sent my stomach into a tight knot. I thought about calling my parents, but their phones went straight to voicemail. No one was coming to help me. The ringing continued, and my instincts screamed at me to move, to do something. I glanced back at the door, my mind racing through possible scenarios. What if he was just a prankster? What if he was a harmless guy who just wanted some candy? But no, there was a darkness in his eyes that chilled me to the bone, a depth that suggested he was anything but harmless. Then came the sound that shattered the fragile facade of normalcy. A heavy thud echoed from the storm door, and my heart dropped. He was forcing it open. Panic surged within me, and I ducked low, creeping away from the door and into the shadows of the living room. I could hear my own breath, shallow and quick, mingling with the muffled sounds of the world outside. I didn't know what he wanted or what he was capable of, but that moment felt suspended in time, the air thick with dread. I moved silently to the back of the house, toward the kitchen. Maybe I could sneak out the back door and call for help, but what if he was already inside? The doorbell rang again, an unrelenting summons that felt more like a taunt. I pressed myself against the wall, feeling the rough texture of the wallpaper beneath my fingertips. I had to do something. I reached for my phone, but my hand shook so badly I almost dropped it. I dialed 911, my mind racing through the what-ifs. "Please," I whispered into the phone, feeling a swell of tears threaten to spill over. "There's a clown at my house. I think he's trying to break in." The operator's voice was calm, steady, as she asked for my address and assured me help was on the way. I felt a flicker of relief, but it was short-lived. The sound of the doorbell ringing again grated on my nerves, an incessant reminder that I was not safe. The police would be here soon, but in those moments, all I could think about was the clown outside. What did he want? Did he want to hurt me, or was it just a sick game to him, a twisted delight in my fear? I heard the storm door slam against the house, a loud crack that reverberated through the walls, and I nearly screamed. I dropped my phone, and it clattered to the floor as I backed away toward the kitchen. I could hear the scrape of metal against wood the latch had broken. Suddenly, silence enveloped the house, heavy and oppressive. I dared to breathe again, straining to hear anything other than the pounding of my heart. I wished I could see outside, but the windows were shrouded in darkness, and I didn't want to risk being spotted. After what felt like an eternity, the sound of sirens broke the stillness, a reassuring wail cutting through my fear. The police had arrived. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but it was tinged with a lingering sense of dread. I crept back toward the front door, hoping to see the officers moving up the driveway. I wasn't sure what I would say, how I would explain this madness, but as I peered through the peephole, my heart plummeted. The clown was gone. My breath caught in my throat as I turned and bolted to the back of the house. The officers were knocking on the front door, calling out to me, but I couldn't process anything but the need to escape. I slipped into the kitchen and crouched behind the table, my mind racing as I waited for the police to come inside. After a few moments, I heard the sound of footsteps in the hallway, the crunch of gravel outside, and the distant hum of voices. The officers found me huddled beneath the table, and I scrambled to my feet, feeling tears streaming down my cheeks. "Where is he?" I choked out, my voice trembling. The clown, he was here. The officers exchanged glances, concern etched into their features. They quickly assured me they would search the perimeter of the house, but a sinking feeling crept into my gut. What if he'd slipped away into the night? What if he was still lurking out there, waiting for me to let my guard down? They inspected the storm door, noting the broken latch, and made a mental note to file a report. They even found a ladder propped against the side of my house, leading to my bedroom window, and my heart dropped. He had been planning something. After a thorough sweep of the property, the officers returned and escorted me to the living room, where I struggled to hold it together. They explained they would keep a patrol car nearby for the rest of the night, but that didn't quell the turmoil raging inside me. As they left, I glanced out the window, half expecting to see that familiar silhouette standing at the end of the driveway, waiting with that sinister grin. But there was nothing, just the dark void of night. I didn't sleep at home that night. My friend Jake's house was close enough, and I clung to the hope that being away from my own home would somehow shield me from the memories of the clown. As we sat in his room, surrounded by the familiar chaos of teenage life, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there, something that had found me and now lay in wait. In the days that followed, I tried to forget the encounter. I wanted to dismiss it as a harmless Halloween prank gone awry, but the images clung to me like cobwebs. I couldn't shake the feeling of those eyes watching from the darkness, nor could I erase the feeling of that painted grin lurking behind my thoughts. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, life returned to a semblance of normalcy. I went back to school, and the memories of that night faded into the background noise of my life. But each Halloween that followed, I found myself glancing over my shoulder, feeling the weight of a presence just out of sight. It wasn't until the following year, on a cool October evening, that I found myself standing at my front door once more, handing out candy to the kids in the neighborhood. I told myself it was just a holiday, a time for fun and laughter, but as the sun dipped below the horizon, a familiar chill settled over me. The doorbell rang and I froze. I hesitated, my heart racing as I approached the door, the creeping sense of dread clawing at my throat. I peered through the peephole, and there he was, a tall figure in a clown costume, face painted in grotesque delight, eyes gleaming with something dark. This time I opened the door, refusing to be paralyzed by fear. But as I stared into that malevolent smile, I knew it wasn't just a costume. This was something real, something that had returned to claim what it had lost. In that moment, I understood sometimes laughter isn't a sign of joy. Sometimes it's the echo of something sinister lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for its moment to resurface. Story 3: The Halloween Gathering. The air hung thick with the scent of autumn, rich with decay and the sweet, unmistakable tang of impending fear. Halloween was creeping closer, and with it came the familiar pang of longing for the thrill that only this time of year could deliver. My friends and I were desperate for some excitement, last-minute plans that would breathe life into the season. It was when one of them scrolled through social media, her eyes lighting up at a party invitation from a mutual acquaintance, that our course was set. The house party, they said. A real bash filled with revelry and spirits both liquid and supernatural. We all agreed, driven by a mixture of youthful bravado and the intoxicating thrill of the unknown. Little did we know that what awaited us behind that door would be something altogether darker. The house loomed ahead, its shadowy figure creeping into view as we approached. It was an old place, the kind of house you expect to see in horror films, dimly lit, with peeling paint and a front porch that creaked ominously beneath our weight. The atmosphere was thick with a Halloween ambience that felt almost staged, as if the decorations were placed there for show rather than for celebration. As we stepped inside, An unsettling chill washed over me, prickling the back of my neck. The interior was alive with the low hum of conversation and laughter, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being out of place. We didn't recognize anyone, faces blending into a sea of costumes and laughter. My heart quickened, a warning perhaps, or just the thrill of being somewhere new. The unease settled in my stomach like a rock. We were greeted by the host father, a man in his 50s with an affable smile that somehow felt forced. He was a wiry thing, the type who wore his friendliness like a mask, eager to charm but missing something vital in his eyes. As he ushered us into the main room, I couldn't help but notice how he hovered, his energy oddly frenetic. He insisted on taking our drinks. "I'll mix something special for you kids," and I caught a glance at my friends as they exchanged looks. A cocktail of unease brewed among us, but we were too polite to voice our discomfort. Instead, we laughed it off, trying to dismiss the prickling sensation that crawled beneath our skin. As he worked, pouring, shaking, and mixing, I felt a sense of dread deepen. There was something wrong here, something hidden beneath the surface of his joviality. He handed out drinks with a flourish, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching, gauging our reactions, waiting for something. Before I knew it, I was swept into a game of beer pong. The laughter of my friends echoed around me, and I lost myself in the chaos. The cups clinked and the ping pong balls bounced, laughter swirling around like a fog. But then came that drink, the one he'd handed me moments before, a concoction that burned its way down my throat. I was only half aware of the revelry, the sound blurring into a dull roar. And then everything went black. I don't remember falling or the dull thud as my body hit the floor. The next memory I have is of waking up disoriented in the backseat of a car. The sun was filtering through the windows, casting patterns on the upholstery, but all I could feel was the nausea bubbling in my stomach. As I struggled to sit up, I realized I wasn't alone. My friend sat in the front seat, her knuckles white against the steering wheel, eyes wide with panic. The remnants of the party were nothing but a foggy dream, a mirage dream, a mirage that evaporated the moment I tried to grasp it. "What happened?" I managed to croak out, my voice raspy and foreign to my ears. But the look on her face told me everything. I had been out cold, lost to the world while someone had taken control. I staggered out of the car and stumbled towards the house, hoping to reclaim some sense of normalcy, but the oppressive weight of dread settled heavily in my chest. My phone buzzed in my pocket and I pulled it out, hoping for some grounding familiarity. Instead, I was greeted by a series of frantic texts from the host's father. I should have felt relief that he was trying to check on me, but the message felt wrong, off kilter in a way that made my skin crawl. He was trying to locate me and I didn't understand why. "Where are you? Are you okay? I've been looking for you." The words felt like chains wrapping tighter around my mind. A sudden realization hit me. The number he was texting from was a voice over IP number. I had seen enough crime shows to recognize that. It was the kind of number you could hide behind, a barrier that could obscure the truth. Who was this man really? I felt the walls of the house around me pulse with a life of their own, a collective heartbeat that whispered warnings in my ear. We shared our experiences, piecing together the fragments of that night. My friends were just as shaken, recounting how the father had hovered over us, watching with an unsettling intensity. There was something in the way he moved, a predator amongst prey. They shared the whispers that had circulated among the other party-goers, stories of the father's past, tales of strange disappearances, and lingering rumors that followed him like a shadow. With every word, the atmosphere grew heavier, suffocating. Fear twisted in my gut, clawing its way up my throat as I realized the depth of what we'd encountered. I was more than just a girl at a party. I had brushed against something dangerous, something dark. We decided to report it to the police, adrenaline pushing us forward as we relayed our experiences, laying it all bare. The officers listened, their faces impassive but attentive, as they took our statements. There was a seriousness in their demeanor that sent a fresh wave of fear crashing over me. This wasn't just a strange encounter, it was a call for help, a warning of what lay beneath the surface. But as the days passed, the silence was deafening. No updates came, no leads surfaced. It felt like we had thrown a pebble into a deep well, watching as it sank into darkness without so much as a ripple. The stories we had shared transformed into whispers, a collective shiver that rippled through our group, leaving us on edge. Even as we tried to resume our lives, shadows lingered. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind outside reminded me of that house, of that man, and the lingering unease that wrapped around my heart like a vice. I could not shake the feeling that he was still watching, lurking just outside the edges of my vision. Halloween came and went, leaving behind a trail of candy wrappers and half-hearted decorations. The world outside returned to its mundane rhythm, but within me lay an ever-deepening dread, the knowledge that I had faced something unfathomable and had come away untouched, yet irrevocably changed. The party had seemed like a harmless excursion into revelry, but it had led us down a path we were never meant to walk. And though we had left that house, I feared that it had not left us. It lingered, a ghost that haunted the periphery of our lives, a reminder that sometimes the darkest things hide in plain sight, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. In the end, it wasn't the night of laughter and fright that haunted me, but the realization that evil is often disguised in the most unassuming of forms. And as I lay in bed, unable to shake the feeling of eyes watching me from the shadows, I understood the lesson all too well: some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed. As we conclude this chilling episode of 3 disturbing true Halloween horror stories, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to all of you for being a part of this journey into the shadows. Halloween is a time of magic and mystery, where the veil between the known and the unknown feels thinner than ever. Tonight we've explored stories that remind us how fragile our sense of safety can be, how even the most ordinary moments can spiral into terror, and how reality itself can shift under the weight of the unexplainable. Your unwavering support is what keeps this channel alive, and I am truly humbled by each view, like, and comment you share. Whether you're here for the fright, the thrill of unraveling a mystery, or simply the love of a good story, you make this community what it is: a place where we can come together and confront the darkness, one tale at a time. Thank you for being part of this shared adventure into the eerie and the unsettling. As we part ways tonight, I want to wish you all good health, happiness, and safety, especially as we enjoy this hauntingly beautiful season. Remember to keep your eyes open and your wits about you. The world is full of shadows, and sometimes they stretch a little closer than we'd like to imagine. Halloween is a reminder of the wonder and fear that coexist in the unknown. Celebrate with loved ones, enjoy the magic, but never forget, sometimes the scariest stories are the ones we never expect to find ourselves in. Until we meet again in the next video, take care of yourselves and those around you. Stay curious, stay safe, and most importantly, stay spooky. Together, we'll continue to shine a light into the darkest corners of the world and uncover the mysteries that lie within. Thank you again for your incredible support. I can't wait to share more chilling tales with you next time. See you soon.